both of us have said that it was the single best thing that we did in preparation for Isaac's birth. And I think one of the things it did for me was I felt so empowered with knowledge about what was happening in my body, about the choices that I could make. I had the knowledge to make those decisions, and that was such a huge gift. Isaac was about a week and 6 days overdue, and we saw the mucus plug, and we were ecstatic. Yes, we were thrilled. And so we threw baked potatoes in the oven and began to get ready. We took pictures, and we were celebrating, getting prepared. And what we didn't know then, which we know now, is that it was the start of a 3-day labor.
It ended up taking longer than we thought. Expect the best, but prepare for a longer labor than maybe you think you might have. Yeah. So, have plenty of clean towels and and food on hand. And if you're nearing your due date, start going to bed early, because you never know when it might be that night.
We decided to hold off on calling family and lots of other people because we knew that this could be a long process. We had been told that he was in a OP position, and so we thought this could be a long labor, and let's just spend as much time at home laboring as we can. I think we ate, and then I went upstairs to our bed and just tried to get really relaxed. What were you doing?
At that point, it was probably 10 or 11 o'clock, and we just said we're going to need rest, so let's just, I had all the stuff that I thought I would need by the front door, and everything was sort of pre-packed that we sort of had in our big birth setup. So all that was by the door, and so I said now we just kind of settle in and try to conserve our energy, and we ate something. We sort of ate a second dinner, even though we didn't really need to, just because we thought we better do it now.
Yeah.
While we still can. And then we just kind of went to bed about 10, and
there was no sleeping.
There was no sleeping.
We went to bed and there was no sleeping. Things started picking up really quickly.
Yeah, I thought, she'll start having a contraction every 15, 10 minutes, and I'll catch little cat naps in between, but it escalated pretty rapidly to the point where there was no dozing or sleeping for me in between. I was next to her, sort of turned her way, so that whenever she started having a contraction, she could elbow me or kick me, and then I would be in there rubbing her back and coaching her along through the contraction.
The contractions were up to a minute long and 3 minutes apart. And I had definitely turned the corner into the more serious signpost. I really wanted coaching. I really wanted Sean to help me get into my just most relaxed state and into that place where I could visualize the contractions. It really helped, and I really needed that. Yeah.
And a very important thing, I think, for coaches is when you get to this phase, when things are going along and things are getting pretty serious, you're not going to be able to ask her what she needs. You're going to have to figure it out. In fact, you shouldn't even bother asking, because you're just going to annoy her. You just have to intuit it, and you have to try something, and if it's not working, she's probably going to let you know. And if it does work, then you're going to have to intuit that too. But asking, do you need this, do you need that, is not going to work.
No. Having more options was not helpful.
Yeah.
No, I wanted you to say, here's the water, and put the straw to my mouth and drink.
Right.
And that to me was, well, it was helpful. But it was, you're right, it was a little annoying to have to make a decision about anything. So just saying, here, eat this pear was a big help.
And that's your job as the coach. You have to make the decisions and have to try to figure out what's needed at that point.
Yeah, if I didn't want it, I would just refuse it.
Yeah. And at that point, we were laboring in the bed. We labored on the floor. We labored in the tub.
Did we?
Yeah. And a lot of that stuff you just have to figure out as you go along. Again, I was trying to, I was learning as we were going along that the thing to do was not say, do you want to get on the floor or do you want to get in the tub? The thing that I would do would be to get the next step ready and say, let's try this. And then if she didn't want to do it, she would let me know. And if whatever it was, oh, that's a good idea, then she's going to get up and she's going to go wherever I'm taking her.
The idea of staying ahead of the contraction was an abstract concept. And once the contractions began and I was working with my breathing, it made complete sense to me. There's a focus that happens where you slightly change your breath and you can feel the contraction before it begins. And if I was thinking about something else or was making a decision about food or thinking about anything else, I could miss that opportunity to just really be in that state of relaxation I needed to be in as the contraction was coming. And so that's one of the greatest things that Sean did as the coach was he made all the decisions and totally facilitated me so that I could stay ahead of them. And once I was ahead of the contraction, it was manageable. It was, even when it got really intense the next day, it was still manageable.
And marking rests was really important too, just to allow you to sort of focus on, okay, in between every one of these contractions, I have a period where I'm not in pain and I'm able to rest and relax, and focusing on that makes it more prominent and makes it a bigger relief in between each one.
So then we packed up and
Yep.
we drove to the hospital.
Yep, and I would say
should say-
even when we started packing up, the contractions sort of started to slow down, and I thought maybe that was just because we had gotten up and we were moving around and there was sort of a little distraction almost. But already things were sort of starting to decelerate from where we were, but the hospital was like kryptonite to contractions because immediately when we got there, everything just slowed down. And, it was so slow that I said, well, while it's slow, I'm going to take a nap. And then I thought I would be asleep for maybe an hour, and then things would be speeding back up again, and somebody would wake me up and we'd get back to work. But then I woke up and 3 hours had gone by, and I thought, what's going on? Why is there no activity? Why is it so quiet in this room? And yeah, things continued to slow down even more than they already were.
The midwife offered us some suggestions to speed up, to potentially get the contractions going again. She offered us nipple stimulation with a breast pump, and she offered changing position, so turning on all fours, and neither of those really worked. We tried both of those things, and neither got contractions
we tried
going
a
again.
bunch of positioning on exercise ball, and it didn't seem to be making any difference, and the contractions were way far apart, and we were sitting there. Ellie was sort of resting, dozing, taking a nap. I was stewing and and wringing my hands about what are we going to do to get this back on track. And her parents were there, both reading or or studying, and I
My
was
mom
like,
was
this
knitting.
yeah, this looks like a study hall instead of a labor and delivery room. And I was like, what are we doing? And soon after that, we sort of talked about options. They said, well, you don't want to sort of augment with Pitocin, but here are some other things we could do. And we sort of said, okay, well, we'll just see what's going to happen. And then they all left. And then maybe half an hour, the midwife came by and she sort of said, these are some other things we can try. And then she also said, that another option is to just go home. Ourselves so many times in our sort of pre-planning, the one thing we don't want to do is get to the hospital too early. So we have to make sure that we don't get to the hospital too early.
The car driving home, I had some really strong contractions.
Yep.
The sun was going down, and I really feel like there was some part of my body that was attuned to the darkness versus the day. And we got home and we got still and turned off the lights, and my contractions started up again.
It was almost like being home sort of really got things to start up again. And I don't think if we had stayed in the hospital, I don't think it would have gone on the same timeline. I think actually coming home encouraged it to get moving.
Yeah.
And, we were sort of right back at it.
Well, so we got into bed, though, thinking, let's do everything we can to rest and maybe I can sleep. But we talked a lot in class about staying ahead of the contraction, and the preparation comes into expecting, welcoming a contraction, meeting a contraction. And I sort of, I would began to fall asleep a little bit and be awoken by a contraction, and it would be in the middle or on the peak, and it was really uncomfortable, really more serious now for me. Mm-hmm. And I really wanted Sean to sleep, so I got out of bed and I thought, okay, I'm going to labor here on the floor, because the worst was being woken up by it. Then I was really behind the contraction, and that was not a good option. So at about 10 p.m. that night, after I had been woken up by the peaks of contractions and realized that's not a good way to go. You need to be prepared and really be conscious in welcoming them. It was right around that time that Susan showed up. And so Susan came in. We invited her to come over, and so she arrived then and offered to labor with me for a while so that you could get some sleep.
Yep.
And so Sean
Which was very,
said,
very useful.
Yes, please, thank you, and went off into the guest room. And Susan and I labored for about 4.5 hours. We labored through more serious, then more very serious, then as serious as you can get before, if you are planning on have a hospital birth before you go to the hospital. I think it was about 2:30 in the morning. I thought I was feeling the urge to push, and so we went, and Susan woke you up.
Yep. And this time, when we started packing up the car, things didn't really slow down very much. They did a little bit, but we were still doing serious work in the car when we were checking in the second time.
Yeah, at 8 a.m., the shift changed, and we had a new team, and we had a wonderful experience. A nurse came in, and I feel like she was handpicked for us, because she came in and she said, I don't normally tell people my story, but a few months ago, I had a posterior baby, all naturally. You can do this. And so we went in the tub, and we stayed in the tub for a number of hours, and then went back into the room. And the posterior labor, for me, caused a lot of back pain. I really needed to be in a few positions, sort of bent over where Sean could massage my back. And so after many hours and really supportive team, we had Sean and my best friend Jenny and wonderful nurses and wonderful midwives. They were so supportive. They just said, keep doing what you're doing great. I think I had, throughout all of this, a sense of disbelief. I was just incredulous that I was going to be able to do this. It was the self-doubt signpost of labor, I think. Pushing lasted all of 30 minutes. It was really fast. I think from the beginning of pushing to the end, I pushed probably 10 times. That was it. It was great. It was wonderful. It was exhilarating. Sean switched modes. He went from, really trying to be meditative and guiding me to my coach, to like the person who I've seen coach me in weightlifting. He kind of jumped into position and was so motivating to me and said, you got this. And it was super exhilarating. I think after now 2 days of laboring, we were both really ready and really excited for this moment. And those first couple of pushes, the energy in the room just felt like Isaac's birth was imminent. And that feeling took over. And yes, I could feel his brow and his nose and his chin. It was like, you're pushing and you feel a little bit of burning, and then suddenly it's like, oh, there's all of these ridges and this topography, and I felt all of that. They put him right on my chest right away, and we left the cord intact as long as we wanted to, and it had stopped, for a minute or so until it had stopped pulsating, and then Sean cut the cord. But when he came right to my chest and lifted his head. He could lift. He had a lot of neck strength and kind of just looked up at me and was beautiful and perfect and alert. And both of us have said that it was the single best thing that we did in preparation for Isaac's birth. And I think one of the things it did for me was I felt so empowered with knowledge about what was happening in my body, about the choices that I could make. I had the knowledge to make those decisions, and that was such a huge gift.